You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to my new friend, Emily Aborn. She's a copywriter and a podcast host whose path to success started in what you might call an unexpected place, as a chalet girl in the Swiss Alps. From health education to private chef work, Emily's journey proves that every experience can shape us in surprising ways, and she'll share with us how these diverse roles laid the foundation for what she does today, along with some stories of alpine adventures and life lessons learned along the way. Today, Emily calls New Hampshire home with her husband and their dog, Clyde. Let's get this party started, shall we? Emily Aborn, welcome to the Imperfect Adulting Show. I'm so happy to have you.
Amy Stone, thank you so much for having me.
Amy Stone. I am Amy Stone. Are you ready for a fun chat?
I think I am.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so today I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. We're going to talk about a time when you worked in the Swiss Alps as something called a chalet girl, but this is going to be a super fun conversation. But before we get into that, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience. Where do you call home? What part of the world? And share as much or as little about your family and day-to-day life as you might want to.
Oh my goodness, what a open field here. Okay. I live in New Hampshire, which actually is a lot of who I am. I was born and raised in Maine, but then we moved to New Hampshire when I was pretty young. So I have good roots here, a really good community here, lots of great friends, some even from childhood. And I live here with my husband and my dog Clyde, and we hike and play really dorky games and watch
Very
shows
nice.
and all the things people do. But I'm really, really happy to call New Hampshire home. I've lived in a lot of other places and tried a lot of other things, and I don't know, I always wanted to get away from here growing up, and here I am.
Well, that's the fun thing about getting away from some places that you sometimes just get away, but other times it gives you a reason to come home. So you said hiking. Are you near the White Mountains? Is that what's in?
We live like 2 hours from the White Mountains, but we actually have one of the most hiked mountains, I think, in the world in our state, just like 25 minutes from me. So Mount Monadnock is the name. It
I don't
means
think I've
like
ever been there. We used to go. So
rock
I'm in.
alone.
We used to. So I live in Miami, Florida, but I grew up in the Northeast. So I miss fall sometimes, right? Like we
Yeah.
don't have fall, and we used to before I had kids and was tied to the school calendar. We would get away for leaf peeping. And one of the places we would go, which sounds like super funny, leaf peeping, but it just means to go to fall. But one of the places we would go is like Franconia Notch and the in New Hampshire and hike around there.
That is the place for it. But I bet you don't miss the transition from fall to winter, which is what's happening right now when your skin is like, it's too dry. You can't
Right. No, I
find
don't. I don't miss
the
that.
balance.
The thing that I really don't miss, the thing that if I never experience again, I always tell people is the freezing rain. Like so, like snow is snow. It can be beautiful, and it has like activities. But when it's just right on the edge and it's rain that's freezing, that's something that I think nobody would complain if Mother Nature was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're
Yeah,
either going to have rain or we're going to have snow."
that and ticks and mosquitoes and these things called deer fly, which will
All
drive
right.
you to insanity.
When I was, so I went to school in the Midwest, and people used to say that when the deer flies came out, it was a sign that it was going to rain soon. That's the thing I remember about that.
Oh,
I don't know
interesting.
if that's true or not, but I mean, we have our own share of weirdo bugs down here in the
Yes, you do.
tropics. But all
And
right, we've
snakes.
gotten off track. We've gotten
Yeah.
off track. Okay, hold on. So New Hampshire, very, very good. You got a dog, you hike. So my first question, we're going to talk about this story is, what is a chalet girl? Like, what does this even mean?
Okay, so there's actually a movie called Chalet Girl,
Oh, really?
which is where I got the information of how I envisioned this experience to look. Okay, it did not look like that. So a chalet girl is they have them in Europe in like I'm sure they have them other places, but basically you go and you cook for the people that are staying in the chalet. You kind of do the laundry. You're kind of like the house manager for the people in the chalet. And there's kind of different roles that you might play. But like for me, I was taken on as the cook, or that was kind of what was presented to me. So I didn't know about all the other responsibilities like the laundry and cleaning the house all of the time and things like that. I just went in with like, okay, my main job is to make sure guests feel welcomed and accommodated, and I cook the meals. So that's it.
Okay, that's what
I
you
think
thought
that
it was going to be.
yeah,
All
there's
right,
a
so we'll
range
go
of
through that.
different things that they would offer.
Okay, so this is like so all right, so we're gonna go through this. How did you find out about this job? I've never of all the crazy jobs that like I've, done and learned about, this is the first time I've heard about it. So how did you even find out about it?
So I went to school for health education. I just like worked for a lot of health food stores, and I was working for a chiropractor, and I would do personal chef stuff for people in their homes, like single parents or parents or families who had like lost someone. I would like go in their house and like make them a week's worth of food and just like give them the menu and everything and set it all aside. So I was like doing that in my local area. And the chiropractor I worked for, she was friends with these folks who traveled to France every year. And she's like, oh, they're looking for somebody to come do this for them in France. And I was like, okay,
You were like,
yes.
I'd like to go to France.
Exactly. Tell me more. And basically, it was a free ride to the Alps, which is like a
Okay.
one-time opportunity. So it was 4 months long, January to just like the beginning of April. And I basically went to Cambridge, Boston, met them. That's where they that's where they lived. We loved each other, and I was like, "All right, sign me up." So that was it. That was in October. And then I like just kept packing my bags up until January, and then hopped on a plane and went.
Very cool. So it was all one family though. It wasn't like a parade of different guests in a house.
Okay, so it was a couple. They were older. The woman
Okay.
skied, and the man actually had Parkinson's disease, and he was kind of like experiencing. He had a lot of issues with that.
Okay.
They would have company pretty much every single day. I mean, you get like 2 or 3 days where nobody else was in the chalet, but pretty much every day we had guests coming.
All
It
right.
wasn't like people would rent it from them. It was just like her friends that would come into town visiting.
That's what I was wondering if it was like you were like managing like well, today it would be an Airbnb. And so now how old were you when you did this? You had already been through school and you were working. So were you in your like 20s?
Okay. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how old I am sometimes. I think so. I was 24. I think I was 24 turning 25 in when I
Okay.
came home. Yeah.
All right. So now you started to talk about this. Um, so and then well before I get to this, so you talked about the fact that you were referred to this job by somebody you were already working with. You were very attracted to an experience in France. What were your other thoughts about this before you got the job? Like what were your expectations and what did you think it would be like?
Okay. I thought I was going to meet this amazing French Prince Charming.
Okay, you were like, I'm Emily in Paris.
Yes, exactly, which I do have a funny story about. I thought that I was going to learn to ski and like really love it and become like a little ski bunny because they do offer you a ski pass, so you get to do that on their dime. And there was also an opportunity to travel other places in Europe, so that was pretty enticing to me. So I knew I was going to have like 10 days off where I could just kind of go do my own thing. So really just like, oh, and I thought I was going to speak like amazing French and be
Yes. Did you
just
speak any French? Had you studied French before you left?
un petit peu, very little amount, enough to get me by, order something I wanted, and then as soon as they decided we were going to have a conversation, I was like, uh-oh.
That is so funny. So I totally commiserate with that because travel Spanish and restaurant Spanish, I mean, or travel words in any language, French or Spanish. I live in Miami, so like we speak a lot of Spanish, but I studied French. It is totally different than trying to actually get by in that language. And
Yes.
one of my kids just had that experience and came home and was like, I've learned that I'm better at the flea market in Spanish than I am in the, security line at the airport. I was
Yes,
like,
I can order a cucumber, but don't get me much further.
that is a very good point. Okay, so I've known many people who've taken a variety of service-oriented jobs, usually a little younger than you, but like to get that foot in the door, like so camp counselor, au pair, that kind of thing. And this sounds like that's in that genre of let me get over there and get a chance to do this. Nannies, like I knew people who would nanny when I was younger to do that. So, what were some of the differences? What was it
Mm.
really like?
Yeah, it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of cleaning. It was a lot of laundry. It was a lot of going to the market every single day because she wanted like certain particular things and a certain way of doing things and certain foods and certain drinks. And there were people coming all the time, and those people had preferences and food allergies and things I had to take into consideration. It was very tiny. So the actual place had two bedrooms. My bedroom was very small, and I had two like less than twin size bunk beds to choose from. So, and I would alternate. Like one night I'd be on the top, one night on the bottom because I couldn't sleep. I did not sleep well there at all. It was freezing cold. It was
It's
so
really, really
cold.
cold. Yeah.
But I think most of all, like kind of joking aside, I was really alone. Like I was really, really lonely. It was hard for me. I did make some friends. I had a friend Felix, and he had these friends from Sweden, and I would go hang out with them, but I didn't really grab on. I didn't have a lot of time to ski. Like I wasn't on vacation. I was basically working. And so I didn't really get to like be part of that culture.
Yeah.
So I would say, as far as like being alone, I was really, I noticed I'm not like, I usually consider myself a very courageous person. I do have my fears, and they're pretty obvious, but a lot of my fears were just like front and center. Like what happens when my support system is gone, then I'm kind of just doing this thing on my own. And so like I was just up against like a lot of my fears, a lot of my anxieties. I was kind of like playing this role that I didn't quite feel like fit me, like right at that age where you're trying to figure yourself out.
Yep.
So that's what it was really like. And let me just share a piece about the Prince Charming, which actually kind of made it more complicated in a way to be alone. I had just met my now husband in like we had just met in October, at the very tail end of October, and we basically like fell in love in November, and then I was leaving in January, and he had actually moved to North Carolina. So like we were now just apart, and
Yeah.
for 4 months. And that was when we were like just growing our relationship. So we tried to get like Skype to work and the phone to work. Like this was before Zoom, but we would get like Skype and the phone and stuff. And it just like nothing was working out. So we ended up having to email every day. We just emailed each other, like very old school, but in a weird way that made me feel more just like off track, I think, because I was like, oh my gosh, I should be there with him, like building this relationship, and I was really far away from it.
Yeah, so you had like one foot in your community at home and you were trying to, and you always knew that this was a short-term thing, which is part of the thing that makes it hard to set up relationships and
Yeah.
in a place where you're not going to stay is that you know it's ending. You know you're only going to be there for 4 months. So you talked a little bit about your fears. It is, I mean, if you've never been in a place where you don't actually speak the language, it is destabilizing
Mm-hmm.
because you just feel like you can't accomplish anything. It's an interesting thing. And so I always tell people like it can be hard. So I have had a large number of people who are responding to this podcast and they're talking about travel and living abroad. And I think that's amazing. I really think it's super cool because it's something that I did. It's something I love to do. I do think that the choice to do that and the decisions that go in that are transformative. So, but I want to push up in a little tiny bit of a different direction, if I can do that. Are you up for that?
Oh yeah.
Right now, your heart is pounding. You're like, what is she going to say?
And I'm
Trust me, this is
also
not an expose.
okay.
All right, so this is a job that you took, right? So, and you told me that you were doing a little bit of food work, and you
Mm-hmm.
had studied health studies, I think is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So you were doing a little bit of food studies. What do you like? So I'm not sure. Did health studies like translate to like private chef type work? Is that like a connection?
in my head, like I wanted to make a business of like healthy cooking for people and yeah, things like
All
that.
right. So, and then now, I don't think you're a chef now, are you?
Not at all.
Okay. No. All right. So
I'm
the
a writer.
reason you're a writer. Okay, very good. So, so I want to like talk about that like sort of path with the jobs, working back from like now, and and connect it because I think that people people often operate with the idea that our professions and our lives are going to be like a linear path. I'm going to
Mm.
study widget making and then make widgets and then retire from widget making. And yet, I will tell you, I very rarely meet people who that is how it works out. So take me through this, like how you like, so you thought you were going to start a business in the States in New Hampshire doing private chef type healthy stuff work. You got the job in the Chalet and now you're a writer. How did that all come together?
Yeah, so I kept trying to follow that path of health education and like cooking and things like that. So when I got back, I ended up working for this like raw vegan restaurant in North Carolina. So I moved. I basically was like, you know what? I've gotten rid of my living situation in New Hampshire. Like I don't really have my next step figured out yet. So I'm just going to go to North Carolina where my parents are and where Jason is 3 hours away and just like see what happens. Like it was
Okay.
at the point where I was kind of like I'm like, I'm not meeting, like he's probably not the one, but like, let's just see where this goes. So I go to my parents' house in North Carolina. I start working for this raw vegan restaurant and I did end up going to where he was because of course he was the one. And
There you
I
go.
just I couldn't find my way. Like I was just trying and trying and trying to force this health education thing to work in the Raleigh area and it didn't work. So I'm just like working for restaurants. Like I basically just took on waitressing job after waitressing job and kept working for chiropractors and being like, I don't like this. So
Okay.
we actually ended up making the decision to, I did end up working in corporate for a little while, like as an assistant. And then we made the decision to move back up to New Hampshire together. I think we'd been dating a year at that point. And when we moved back, we opened a retail shop together, which again, I was trying to make fit this health education mold.
Okay.
It was like sleep and non toxic bedding products and things
Yep.
like that. And then through that journey is really how I came to where I am because we decided, like, well, I decided I don't want to do this retail shop. I don't think I even care about health for other people. I only care about my own. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, it was just one of those moments. And I do sometimes think it happened a little late to me. Like I knew because I always knew I wanted to be a writer, like from my heart of hearts since I was a little kid. And it was just one of those things I couldn't see how that could ever make you money or like how that could ever be a business. So I never really put two and two together. And like it was
Okay.
pretty much what I was doing in every job, like in some way or another. Like you have to market also when you start a business, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that was my non-linear path. And it makes me happy to hear you say that you hear that so often because I think for so many people, especially like I'm going to say women in their 30s, you
Yep.
just feel frustrated with yourself that you can't figure out what you're quote unquote supposed to do because you realize that what you went to school for maybe is not what you like, it's not where you thought you would end up.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, how am I starting over figuring this out again? Like, we've already done that, right? I've already figured this out, but you haven't. And it's okay. I think it's like that's
Yeah.
the way we really get, that's the way we get to that scary dream inside of us. The one that you're
Yeah.
like, this is so terrifying that announcing it makes me sweat. And that's why I know I have to do it.
No, 100%. And so the like one of the reasons, right? So like I call this imperfect adulting, and the two threads that run through it is that adulting is a long journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that allowing yourself to zoom out and be like, hey, let's talk about the whole thing from 18 to 100, not just right now I'm searching for a job, or right now I'm graduating from college, or right now I'm planning a family. And because we tend to focus on the individual transition points, right? And then the other thing is that the imperfect part is not really about like reveling in mediocrity, but understanding that imperfect is the starting point, that
Mm-hmm.
nobody Nobody knows. And if you hold yourself to that perfection standpoint, you may not get started. So, you said you were like, I always wanted to be a writer. And that was the thing. So somewhere in there that was pushing you to do certain things. So then the next question is going to be, it might be weird, but we're going to see. Did the Chalet girl experience, looking back today, now you're writing, you're doing these things. Can you think of anything that the Chalet girl experience gave you? Any skills, practical, confidence, emotional, any of those things that you still use today in your job or just in life?
Two big things are popping to my mind. So number one, I wrote a lot when I was there. I actually
Yeah.
kept like a daily blog, and looking back, I'm able to see that that's been one of the huge threads for me, like throughout my life. So I think it was a pivotal time in that. And number two, I learned that I really like, apart from those, or sorry, in addition to facing those fears and things like that, I learned I can actually handle anything that comes my way. Like, there were some, I did travel a lot. I went to Germany and Spain and London and one more country. Oh, Switzerland, like in that whole 10 days I had. And I had to navigate all of those different
Yeah.
places by myself. Like I was meeting people, but just like the actual like situation. And a lot of stuff happened, and it was kind of crazy and wild. And like I got it. Like I
Yeah.
did it, and nothing happened. Like I didn't melt down in an airport somewhere, and meet my demise. So I think that was a really, really good thing for me. And then I guess I would just add one more thing, which is like, I'm really, really organized and like really good at keeping track of everything. And like, I think actually, weirdly, the Chalet experience was probably very good for, like, they were probably like, who is this person and how is she organizing our lives like this? It's magical. Like, it's just one of my superpowers. And so, like, I think in a weird way, like being able to do that for another family was probably like really good for me, like realizing some of my skills and abilities.
I love that answer. I think that's really good. I don't know if people ever ask you this, but there's like a thing that goes around where people are like, well, do you actually use the things you studied in school? And people are like, no. But I think that sometimes that's a misdirect because maybe you go to school and you study something and you don't directly translate that to your job. But I think there's other skills that we do use all the time, like you're talking about the decision to move away and do something for 4 months, that says a lot about your character and your bravery, right? And then to be able to look back and be like, all right, well, when no one was telling me to, I sat down and wrote every day, which gave me, which is, I'm still doing that. That's like, gave a spot for that. If you drop
Yeah.
you on a desert island, you're going to figure out how to write. You're going to take out little scrolls and do those things. All right. So I think that, yeah. So I think that normalizing the roller coaster versus the like straight linear path, I think is really good. And honoring the fact that we pick up skills and, and resources everywhere we go. They may not look the way we're supposed to be. Like, so you went to the chalet thinking that you were going to find, a French a French companion. But what you actually found was your, deep love for writing, which you knew you had, and your resourcefulness under pressure to
Yeah,
get
and
things
let's add
done.
my D. I think that also I don't want to like negate this because it actually was huge. But like I think that if Jason and I had done the proper dating, like you go on a Saturday date and then you
Yeah.
meet on next Tuesday. Like I don't think it actually would have happened the same way. Like I think that we needed to connect with that friction of email
Well, yeah.
and build our relationship that way. So like even that, I look back and I'm like, okay, I'm so happy with how delayed everything was, because I think just from what I had been through, I don't think the fast path was for me anymore.
Well, and I think that, I mean, there's more than one romance novel that is written based on the
Yes.
swapping of letters. So, like, someday when you write yours, send it to me. Like, and it'll,
Okay.
well, and even Sleepless in Seattle, the movie, I think that's about email, So I think that that is definitely to be said that you were able to strengthen your relationship by having the distance and the very specific communication method of
Yeah.
email. So when I lived in Europe, we didn't have personal computers really yet. So I had to go to an email cafe. and like swipe a card and sit down and send like email. But that was longer ago. That was longer ago. But it's, and today, if you did this today, it would be so much easier because Google Translate on the phone, like
I
it makes,
know.
oh my God, it's like the greatest thing. And you go to a restaurant, you just take a picture and it tells you what the food is.
I
Technology.
can't imagine if Siri and I had been friends then.
Right, right. It's so good. It's so good. All right. So, I know that we've talked a little bit about what you do. You're a writer. I do want to give you a chance to tell the audience about how they can find you and learn more about you. I know you have your own podcast, so tell us all about that.
Aw, thank you so much. So I don't talk about my trip to France on my podcast too
You
much. And
could. No.
I could, unless it relates to marketing. So my podcast is called Content with Character, and it is about bringing your personality, your character, your essence, like what makes you you into your marketing and your content and your written material in your business. So that's my podcast. I do a lot of content and copy and marketing materials for small business owners. Like I have a lot of industry experience. I've worked with 110 different industries, but weirdly and passionately, one of my niches is actually those in the home trades. So thinking like interior designers and
Okay.
painters and builders and things like that. We just have a lot in common, I think. So it really, really works. But I will work with a lot of different folks in industries, people who really want to make an impact with what they're sharing, not just content for content's sake.
Okay. Very, very nice. That's a beautiful description. And people can find that podcast wherever podcasts are. They can just search for it. And I'll put a
Yes.
link to it in the show notes and in the email and everything. All right. So we're going to wrap up with three questions. These are what I call rapid fire, although that's maybe incorrect because brevity is not my strength. Okay. So they're just for fun. The idea is that you are going to try and answer with just 2 to 3 words. No pressure, but so far this has not worked one single time with any guests. But the truth is that I am the problem, not my guests. So here we go. Okay. Um, this question is about food, even though, and I wrote it way before I knew that you had a food component to what you did. So we'll see. Do you prefer these days to cook at home, eat in restaurants, or order and delivery or takeout?
Cook at home 110,000%.
There you go. Now, that was anticlimactic. Now that I know all these things about you that I didn't know before. Okay, for vacations today, do you prefer to visit? And I guess now it's you and Jason. Do you prefer to visit new places and seek out new experiences when you get the chance, or are you a person who likes to go back to some place that you know and enjoy over and over again?
Both
Oh, cheater, cheater.
depend. Yeah, it would depend. But I think I prefer familiar. I see now I'm not giving you 3 words.
Well, you already
Well,
answered both.
it
This is like the
depends.
both. It
Can I
depends.
bring my own supplies?
All right, very good. Okay, now this one is oddly specific and personal. And now you're probably scared, but anyway, do you use scented or unscented laundry detergent?
Unscented.
Ah, me
Yes.
too.
Yeah. The scented stuff has always bothered my skin. And like
Yeah.
people used to walk in our house when we were kids and be like, oh my gosh, it smells like your house always smells like laundry detergent. And now I realize that was just like our house always smelled like very toxic materials.
That's also the reason we don't have anything with fragrance in it because we have very sensitive skin
Yeah.
and so people it is when I go into somebody's house and they use scented there would have been a follow-up that was like what is your favorite scent, but people often when we have house guests sometimes they're like none of your soaps have any scent, and I'm like I know I bought them.
When someone comes home from like staying at an Airbnb, I'm like, oh gosh, like that suitcase needs to air out for like 2 weeks because I can smell it everywhere.
Yeah, no, that is the way. So that is it. That is a wrap. I want to thank you very much, Emily, for being a guest on Imperfect Adulting.
Thank you for having me. Fun questions.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting Podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.